Hi everyone, this is Mahina and welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast, where in today's episode, we will focus on the challenges and opportunities in Canada's supply chain, particularly the impact of CBSA's new CARM portal on cross-border trade. Small businesses are the backbone of Canada's economy and the efficient trade is essential to their success. We'll explore of how these challenges can be managed and how businesses can stay resilient. Our guest today is Lisa McEwan, the Vice President of Hemisphere Freight and Customs Brokerage Services, Inc. With over 15 years of expertise in cross-border trade, Lisa has helped businesses around the globe navigate customs and supply chain complexities. She recently launched CGL Transportation, Inc., furthering expanding Hemisphere's freight services and capabilities. Hi, Lisa. It's a pleasure to have you with us here today. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about all the stuff happening.
We're very honored to have you on the podcast, Lisa. I mean, your experience in cross-border logistics and supply chain management is incredibly valuable, especially as businesses face new CARM portal challenges. Let's start with the most immediate challenge facing importers, the CARM portal. I mean, this new system is meant to streamline custom procedures, but it's proving to be more of an obstacle for many businesses. Lisa, could you please explain how the CARM portal is affecting trade efficiency and what challenges businesses are facing during this transition?
Sure. So right now we're actually in a blackout period for the CARM portal. So that's the CBSA Assessment Revenue Management Program. That's basically what the portal stands for. So it's a mandatory portal. All importers need to get on it. If you weren't on now, then they're saying that the release date is going to be October 21st. The biggest challenge is just onboarding itself. It requires information that sometimes the CRA didn't have the proper information. I had a lot of, small businesses where we're trying to onboard them onto the portal and they're unit 68 and the government has them as unit 65 and immediately can't onboard. And you have to rely on, a government hotline to actually get onto the portal. And then once you are onboarded onto the portal, there's changes into how entries into Canada are now accounted for. And I guess the biggest change will be how duties and taxes are paid and how security is posted. So I think that is actually the biggest challenge is because once, an importer, or if they're new to importing, are onboarded onto the portal, they don't really understand, how to make those payments directly to the CBSA. And very soon after this portal is introduced on the 21st, importers are going to be expected to post their own security. So they're either going to have to post 100% cash at the time of importation, or they're going to have to get a bond in place. But all this, again, it requires people, right? And, we've had a lot of strikes we had a CBSA strike looming, we had a CN strike. So, there's a huge reliance on government workers right now, and there's already such pressure on them. And then to have everyone, have to onboard onto this portal, there's just sheer volume. Mm-hmm. And there's been delays. There's been a huge lack of information. And now, I'm sure we're going to run into some technical difficulties as well.
It's clear that this new system is causing a lot of confusion, delays. I imagine this is specifically difficult for small businesses that don't have dedicated teams to handle these complexities. But Lisa, how can partners like Hemisphere Freight assist small businesses in navigating these challenges more effectively?
Yeah, I think, one thing is there's just been such a lack of information by the government itself and by, just coverage about it. Some of my clients, when I first started talking to them about CARM, they actually thought it was insane. What are you talking about? What is this portal? I don't need to do it. And it's been 2 years now of us saying, CARM is coming and here it is. Having a customs broker, someone like me, you're getting up-to-date information. I know a lot of customs brokers out there, similar to myself. We've had to, take a financial burden of creating a whole department of people dedicated to this CARM portal. So I have administrative staff of people that call and explain what the portal is, help onboard, to the point of even screen sharing and, an hour basically an hour meeting of getting them fully onboarded and doing three-way calls with a CBSA representative because we can't onboard properly with the information we have.
Right.
So, I mean, it's almost impossible to onboard without having the assistance of a customs broker or a freight broker, someone with just a little more information and a little more, up to date on the changes that are happening, and also like knowing how to navigate the portal.
It's quite evident that the CARM portal rollout is having a significant impact on trade efficiency, but with the right support, businesses can mitigate these challenges. And listeners, on that note, navigating complex customs regulations can be daunting, especially with new systems like CARM. So if you're a small business affected by these changes, remember that partners like Hemisphere can offer expert guidance to ensure your operations run smoothly. Now, Lisa, let's look at how this could potentially affect the economy, particularly when it comes to losing critical imports from the US, because we've already seen how the CARM portal is slowing down trade. But another concern is the potential economic loss, especially with the US companies hesitant to navigate these changes. How do you see these challenges affecting Canada's economy, particularly when it comes to losing critical imports? And could this lead to long-term economic consequences?
So I've seen a lot of US vendors or entities, once we have to explain to them a realistic timeline and all the steps now to get onboarded onto the CARM portal, I've seen them kind of say that, we're gonna hold off right now. We're not gonna import at the moment. Like for them, it's actually quite difficult. They have to get a Canadian business number by the CRA, which takes like up to 10 to 14 business days. And then after that, you're looking at getting an importer number activated and then registering on the CARM portal. And then, having all this information accessible to the Canadian government, which might not be great for a US entity. Like, they already pay taxes in the US, and it might be a little different of how they account for taxes in Canada. So yeah, there's definitely going to be an issue there for US vendors. So I think if you are a small business and you heavily rely on your vendor handling the importing into Canada, I think that you definitely need to plan ahead, and you need to, you might need to take importing into your own hand. I think hopefully that once we work at the kinks of the CARM portal, things will get faster. We'll probably be able to help US entities, with timelines, but also if they have more access to information, then it wouldn't be a big surprise to them. And US entities could also plan ahead and give
Right.
themselves like effective timelines that they will need if they're going to be importing.
That's a worrying trend, though, especially since so
Oh,
many Canadian
totally. Yeah.
businesses, they rely on
Yeah.
imports from the US. But it's just not about delays. I feel like it's but more potentially about losing trade partnerships altogether. But Lisa, what would you suggest is a solution to avoid these disruptions and keep the trade flow smoothly?
I can't reiterate it more. You have to plan ahead.
Hmm.
Like there isn't going to be any fast solution to the importing process at the moment. So, you really need to make sure you have your information in place. You need to make sure you have a broker in place. There's so many steps. You almost need like a checklist and make sure that you've hit all those checklists before you even ship something.
Right. No, it's quite concerning to think about the potential economic loss if the trade with the US is hindered. But with the right adjustments, as you said, perhaps we can avoid the worst of these disruptions. And listeners, trade disruptions can have ripple effects on the entire economy. So from, delayed goods to lost business partnerships. And it's very crucial for businesses to stay informed and prepared to navigate these challenges. Lisa, now let's explore how the situation is adding further strain to an already fragile global supply chain, because supply chains worldwide have already been stretched thin due to post-pandemic recovery, and these new hurdles from the CARM portal could add even more pressure. But how do you think these CARM-related challenges will affect Canada's border supply chain, and what can businesses do to prepare for potential disruptions?
So once again, it's planning ahead, but having backup in place. For vendors, like being solely reliant on one vendor is never going to be your best benefit for your supply chain. I've had a lot of clients who, over the years of COVID, have really had to, look elsewhere. Think about like free trade agreements that Canada has elsewhere. as a good example, I had a client that dealing with closures in China all the time. They had to eventually, look at what other options they have. And they were able to move their full production to Bangladesh and then take advantage of like duty-free trade between Canada and that country. And so I think you really got to start thinking outside of the box and see these shortages happening and planning ahead.
It seems like businesses are really caught in a tough situation and having to adapt to changes on top of already existing supply chain issues. But do you think there is a way for Canadian businesses to build more resilience into their supply chains to prevent future disruptions?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to be aware that not much is produced here in Canada. We have a heavy reliance on importing, and we need to start taking more advantage of globalization. I mentioned before about the free trade agreements. Those are a big deal, right? If you're bringing in textiles from China into Canada, you're paying 18% duty, right? Whereas if you were to bring it in from a free trade country like Bangladesh or Israel or the European agreement, then you're bringing those in duty free.
Right.
So to like that right off your top margin is a huge, that's a huge positive for you, even taking into account like shipping costs. Yeah. So, I mean, I think like, yeah, as entrepreneurs or importing, you really need to, make plans, and you really need to make sure that, you have options, you have backup, and you're not having like a heavy reliance on just that one supply chain.
Mm. The
Also,
supply chain.
sorry.
Go
Also,
for it.
you really need to think about like modes of transportation right now because it's a big issue. We have a Montreal port on strike right now. The ILA is looking like that's going to be on strike, and that is all ports from Houston to New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Or New York State, sorry. So that makes up over 50% of all imports and exports of the US right now. And that's happening tomorrow. So
Wow.
as I said, being informed and understanding that all these changes are happening and they happen fast with like limited information available allows you to plan ahead and kind of think about different things that you can navigate to avoid that.
Supply chain resilience is more important now than ever, and especially in the light of these new challenges. But now we'll love to dive into the skills and strategies businesses need to stay ahead of these disruptions and maintain their competitive edge. Because, Lisa, as we talk about challenges, now we'd like to highlight some of the solutions. Resilience is key for businesses to survive and thrive in today's uncertain environment. And based on that, like based on your experience, what are some of the best strategies businesses can adopt to build resilience into their supply chains and avoid major disruptions?
I think the best you can do is knowing information ahead of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like with the CARM portal, there has been a huge lack of information out there. There's been a lot of ambiguity of if that portal is going to be delayed again or if it's happening. But, you shouldn't wait for delays. You need to just kind of take it by the horns, I guess, and find the information available and know that these are steps that you need to do. Really just waiting in the background and hoping it's not something that's going to happen is not going to help you.
Right.
Keeping up to date with information, as I mentioned, like the strikes happening right now, these have been looming for a few weeks. So if you were booking freight within the last few weeks, then you should, make sure about getting a rerouting option, or maybe you're looking into air imports as opposed to ocean right now.
Mm-hmm.
Or keeping a surplus of inventory because you can expect delays or shortages. I think a huge thing is cash flow for small businesses.
Right.
So this new portal changes how duties and taxes are accounted for. And just so like if someone can kind of understand, is if you were to import, let's say, a machine and you owed $500,000 in GST, and you did it on the 24th of the month and it released from customs that day, by the last business day of the month, you owe that duty and GST directly to the CBSA.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, that's a huge cash flow for you. You may not even have the machine yet. It's released to customs, but it's sitting in a warehouse. It hasn't even been there. You haven't even been able to use it for your business. to operate, or you have like clothing inventory that hasn't even come yet and you've had to pay the duties and taxes on it, and you haven't been able to sell it yet. So a big thing is going to be cash flow and really being aware of that, of how CARM is going to affect it, and how supply chain management based on strikes happening in Canada and the US.
It's quite reassuring to hear that there are still actionable steps businesses can take to protect themselves from these disruptions. But let's talk about how businesses can stay informed and prepared for future changes in the trade landscape, because the trade landscape is constantly evolving and businesses need to stay ahead of these changes to maintain their competitive edge. Lisa, what can businesses do to stay informed and prepare for the future changes in these regulations or supply chain challenges?
Yeah. So, having people that are in place that you can lean on, right? Someone like myself, I've had multiple calls today, people asking, how is this going to affect me right now with our stuff that's coming in with the Montreal port strike right now, right? So even you have a 3-day strike, we have someone like me who can tell you where your container is, with the probability of, when it will be released, and what kind of timeline you're looking at. You need up-to-date real-time information, and you're going to need someone in the professional landscape to help you get there and get that information. So, having the proper people in place, like a freight broker and a customs broker, and making sure that your logistics manager, or even if it's just a one-man band that you're operating right now, having someone that you can speak to and someone that can give you proper information up to date, because reliance on the internet right now and reliance on government websites on what's happening and what real information is, unfortunately, it's not up to par.
Well, staying ahead of these changes seem like a full-time job in itself, but it's critical for business success. Lisa, what role do partnerships like those with Hemisphere Freight play in helping businesses navigate these changes effectively?
For sure. I mean, I have a whole CARM department. So anyone who's been a customer at Hemisphere Freight, they've known for years that this CARM portal is coming in. We basically handheld them from the beginning process all the way down to someone, even me, who is one of the co-owners of the business, showing them on their easy web banking on how you can pay online your duties and taxes.
Right.
Because also too, when you're giving people the information that's available by the government, I mean, it's a 40 or 75-page document that a lot of it is jargon that isn't, you can't really understand. But when you have someone, step by step explain the process in layman's terms for you, then I think it gives you an opportunity to learn how to navigate the portal yourself, learn all the tools that you have, like tracking for shipping and looking up ocean container numbers, and certain up-to-date information. I know also too, a lot of brokers and freight brokers, we offer newsletters. So today, tons of emails going out about how we can help out with the strike, what to expect, and how we can help.
Hmm. Well, it's clear that staying informed and having the right partners can make all the difference when facing future trade challenges. But Lisa, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience, or any advice for businesses navigating these challenges?
So I think like we're going through some turbulent times right now in supply chain. I feel like we just started getting back in momentum after COVID, and now we have we had a rail strike, we had a potential CBSA strike. Now we're having multiple port strikes. The ILA strike that's pretty much 95% happening tomorrow is half of the U.S. imports that come in and out of that country. So majority of the fruit and vegetables coming in, all of this stuff is going to be halted at the border, and the end consumer is the one who's going to see that, or the small businesses purchasing, because there's going to be shortages, there's going to be delays, there's going to be increases in transportation prices because of all of this stuff happening, as well as if you decide to book an air shipment right now, I don't even think it's going to be possible because of all the ocean issues at the moment. So I think you really need, as I mentioned before, like you really need to pay attention to your inventories, pay attention to things that you need, being ahead, planning ahead, and not being, a last minute, not operating your business as last minute decision making.
Lisa, it's been a great pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for sharing such invaluable insights and for helping businesses navigate these complex trade challenges. Again, thank you for your time.
Anytime. Thank you for having me.
And that wraps up our today's episode of the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. We had a privilege of speaking with Lisa McEwan, VP of Hemisphere Freight and Customs Brokerage Services, about the impact of the CARM portal, the supply chain disruptions, and how businesses can build resilience. We'd also like to thank our partners, UPS, RBC, Constant Contact, IAG, and Google for their continued support in making this podcast possible. To our listeners, please don't forget to subscribe to our magazine at CanadianSME.ca for more insightful content. Again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.